Have you ever sat in that heavy silence at a family dinner? Here on Human Stories, we retell those moments, honest, everyday, sometimes controversial. Every story is a mirror. Subscribe, join the conversation, and maybe find a little healing. They auctioned my life by the square foot. Unit 17, the man in the orange vest called rain ticking on the corrugated roof like coins on a casket. The steel door rattled up. A cold draft rolled out smelling of damp cardboard and lemon cleaner. Inside a cracked crock pot, 2 bankers' boxes of tax returns, a Christmas wreath flattened under a broken lamp, my handwriting on a shoebox, Jason's softball. A woman in a plastic poncho raised her paddle. The gavel smacked. Someone laughed casual and warm. I pressed my palm to the door frame and felt rust bite. I had come to buy back one thing, the mug with the blue stripe that used to sweat in my husband's hand while he read the sports page. But I was $57 short by the time Unit 16 emptied, and the man in the vest took cash only. Rules are rules, ma'am. He looked past me to the next paddle. Outside November mist needled through my sweater. I stood under the gutter and counted the coins in my pocket. 2 quarters, 3 nickels, a silver button that had fallen off the only good coat I had left. On the sidewalk, someone had spilled coffee. It steamed like a small animal breathing. The laughter from the auction rolled out again as they raised another door. I left before they got to the boxes with my name. 6 weeks earlier, the smell had been toner and shipping tape. We were at a UPS store because Brooke liked the parking. She wore sunglasses indoors and tapped her ring against the counter, a diamond knocking time. Jason kept his hands tucked in his jacket the way he did when he wanted to look concerned. The clerk slid a stack of forms across the counter. Initial here, here, and sign there, Jason said. Easy, as if he were pointing out a menu. It just lets me help with the bills while you sort things out. I'm fine with the bills, I said. We know, Brooke said, smile not touching her eyes. But the bank needs a durable power of attorney on file in case. It's responsible. A line formed behind us. The printer spit labels. Someone taped a box and the sound tore down my spine. Just this page, Jason said softly. For me. I signed where the yellow flags told me. It took the court 15 minutes. 2 murmured terms I didn't understand, and 1 signature from a judge who never looked up to turn everything with my name on it into everything with his. I slept at the TriMet bus station for the first week. The benches were metal and curved, so you couldn't really lie down. The air smelled like diesel and pink hand soap. A kid with a shaved head and a backpack, Sky, asked if he could sit. We split a turkey sandwich without talking. He fell asleep with his cheek against the glass and left a breath circle there, a small proof that someone had been warm once. By the 3rd week, I knew which diner served coffee refills the longest. If you kept your hands wrapped around the cup and looked out the window as if waiting for someone. The neon open hum like a bee trap behind the sign. The booths were vinyl and stuck to the back of your legs. I watch people come in out of rain, shake it off, order pie laugh. The bell over the door gave the same bright jingle whether it was a family or a man alone. Ms. Whitaker. He wore a navy raincoat and carried a folder under his arm, like it weighed something you could drop and break. He said my name as if it still belonged to me. I'm Nora, I said. Alex Pruitt, he said. I'm an attorney. He waited for me to flinch, and when I didn't, he pulled a chair and sat. He set the folder on the table, careful not to touch the sugar caddy or the coffee ring my cup had left. The waitress refilled my coffee unsubtly, like she refilled his too to prove I was a customer. This isn't about Jason, Alex said. It's about Ethan Malloy. I dragged his name out of storage. Ethan was my mother's boy after my father died. Then a streak of trouble and off to Alaska, then real estate in Arizona. We hadn't spoken in years. He'd called once after David's funeral and left a voicemail that started with, "Hey kid," and ended with a click because I couldn't find the phone in time. Alex opened the folder. Paper shone white-blue under the diner lights. "Mr. Malloy passed away in September," he said. He left a will. You are the primary beneficiary. You're mistaken, I said. The neon beat OPENOPEN. A residence called Cliff House on Crescent View Road near Cannon Beach. He slid a photograph across the formica. The house was wood-shingled and square-shouldered, sitting on a cliff with stairs cut into stone. In the picture, the ocean looked like a sheet of steel. Independent appraisal places it around $2.6 million. There are additional assets accounts and investments estimated at $15 million. The numbers washed over me like cold water. My skin knew before my brain did that it made no sense. The waitress set down a plate at the next table and the eggs slid on butter. The smell turned my stomach. No, I said, because no had been my only word for months. No, thank you. Ethan wrote a condition, Alex said. It's not a trap, it's a structure. I smiled, the dry kind. Those are made of the same lumber. You'd need to reside at Cliff House for 60 consecutive days. He talked like a person walking on ice, slow and flat-footed. During that time, you compile a digital timeline, receipts, calls, emails, notes of the events leading to the guardianship order. Organize it, label it. At the end of the residency, you host a recorded meeting with the parties involved. They're given a choice, a restorative agreement, return, repair, admit, or you proceed with civil and criminal complaints. My office covers logistics. Ethan stipulated we provide you with tech support. He said the last part like he'd rehearsed it on the drive over the windshield wipers, keeping time. I looked at his hands. Clean nails, one knuckle scar on the right hand, a past with a hinge or a dog leash. Why me slipped out? It was a small question with 1,000 years behind it. Because you're his sister, Alex said simply. Because he followed your life from a distance. Because he knew you'd try to forgive your son while sleeping on a bench. The neon hummed. Forks chimed. Outside, a bus exhaled at the curb. I lifted my coffee and it shook. I can't even rent a room, I said. Jason put a note on my credit. There's a flag. The woman at the bank said I should bring my guardian next time for clarity. The word had tasted like rust then. It still did. You won't need a credit score for a house that's yours, Alex said. He reached into the folder and set a small envelope on the table. It was heavy for its size. There are keys, preliminary codes, and a letter from Ethan. Something clinked inside when I picked it up. I opened the flap. A brass key slid into my palm, warm from the walk across the parking lot. It had a notch near the head like a bite mark. The metal smelled faintly of salt. I can't promise it'll be simple, Alex said. Your son's counsel filed an emergency motion yesterday to enjoin distribution of the estate assets. We'll answer. The will is solid, drafted with 3 witnesses and medical letters, but there's noise. Noise, I repeated. He nodded. A capacity evaluation that appears coached. And an audio file your son's team submitted, purportedly you rambling and confused during a phone call. Our preliminary analysis suggests edits, splices. The court clerk didn't catch it. We will. The key sat in my hand like an answer heavier than a question. A car tire hissed past on wet asphalt and sent spray against the glass. On the TV over the counter, a football game played silently with closed captions that couldn't keep up. Somewhere a spoon fell and the whole diner went quiet for a second, the way rooms do when weather shifts. I don't want revenge, I heard myself say. Good, Alex said. That isn't the job. What is the job? He tapped the folder. To get the truth into the right shape, so it can stand up. The open sign flickered once, twice, then steadied. I pressed my thumb to the head of the key and felt the notch. It fit my skin like something that had been waiting. Alex closed the folder and slid it toward me. There's one more thing, he said softly. I need to tell you because surprises are what got you here. I looked up. What? There's another trap, he said. And it's already been set. We left the diner with the neon still humming. Outside, the rain had shifted from needles to thread finer, but everywhere a cool seam, stitching skin to coat. Alex walked me to his car as if the parking lot might reach up and take me. He didn't rush. He didn't fill the space with words. I held the folder under my arm like a hot loaf I was afraid to drop. The drive to the coast took 2 hours if you counted the silence. Trees darkened and thinned. The air turned to salt. Somewhere past seaside, the ocean showed itself in blue-gray bands, an animal lying on its side breathing. "Read it when you're ready," Alex said, tapping the envelope with Ethan's name. "Codes are inside. Someone will meet us to unlock the gate, then leave you be. You'll come back. I'm counsel on record," he said, "which means I don't get to disappear." Cannon Beach rose out of fog, cedar shakes and long porches, shop windows dressed for a holiday I had no date for. Alex turned up a hill and followed a road that narrowed to a strip tucked between hedges. A black iron gate stood at the end. He keyed a code and the gate shouldered open. Cliff House didn't look modern. It looked stubborn. Shingles silvered by years of weather. Windows squared up against wind. A deck hung over the drop to the rocks, its railing white and freshly painted, as if someone still cared about edges. Inside, the first thing I smelled was wood, warmed by whatever light the day could spare. The entry opened to a room organized around a stone hearth. On the mantel sat an hourglass in brass, the old kind with glass that looked hand-blown bubbles caught inside like tiny moons. Sand had settled at the bottom in a clean cone. "The power's on." "The fridge is stocked," Alex said. "There are 2 people who come twice a week, the housekeeper and the groundsman. They don't stay at night." "Stay?" "Good," I said before I knew I wanted to be alone here. We made a slow orbit. Kitchen with a farmhouse sink, its porcelain craze like a river at drought. A library with shelves and a rolling ladder. A study on the 2nd floor with the desk so wide you could sit in the middle and touch neither side. In the study wall, a square cut into the wood, a safe paint matched to the paneling, almost shy. On the desk, labeled in Ethan's block letters, a 4-pack of old cassettes in a plastic case. A note taped to the top. "Keys," Alex said. I gave him the envelope. He withdrew a ring. The brass key lay there like a memory. He set it in my hand and closed my fingers over it, the way you would a coin in a child's palm. I felt the notch find the place in my skin it had made at the diner. We tried the safe. Not with the key that went to something else, but with a code Ethan had written in the letter tucked behind the cassettes. The spindle turned, the heavy door sighed out. Folders waited inside edges buffed pale from being handled by someone who took time to handle things right. An external hard drive. A thick envelope rubber-banded so tight the paper indented. A postcard from somewhere dry saguaro against orange sky. On the postcard, "Kid, if this works, you're holding it." E. I didn't trust my legs to decide whether to stand or sit. I chose the desk chair. It held me as if it had been adjusted for my weight before I came. Alex didn't look at the pages. He watched my face like he would know when to look away. "I need to read this alone," I said. "I expected you would." He wrote a number on the back of his card and set it face down. "The grounds are fenced. There's exterior camera coverage. If anything feels off, call the sheriff. Then call me." "Is the other trap in here?" I asked, hand on the folder with the rubber band. "In the world around here," he said. "Your son's filing includes that audio. It will surface again, and people aligned with him will try to reposition the story. That's what traps do, make the ground feel like it moved." He stood. "Someone named Tiana will stop by tomorrow, tidy up, check the linens. Koa comes Thursdays for the trees. There's a community center on Hemlock if you need a face that isn't mine or the ocean's." He almost smiled. "I'll see myself out." When the door closed, the house breathed. Houses do that, even empty ones. Boards adjust, air settles. The ocean kept time because it felt like time should be kept somewhere. I opened Ethan's letter first. He wrote the way he spoke when he wasn't trying to sell anything short, direct with room around the words. He apologized without turning the apology into a story. He told me to stack the timeline like firewood, straight dry, ready to burn if it had to. He asked me to stay, not to hide, not to heal, just to stay. "60 days isn't punishment," he wrote. "It's a door frame." I set the letter under the hourglass on the desk and pressed 2 fingers to the glass. Cold than a hint of the heat my fingers made. I flipped it. Sand began to fall slow, steady, a rhythm you could believe. The cassette player sat beside the tapes a block with buttons so big my thumb looked small. I slid in WK1 and pressed play. Ethan's voice came up through a soft hiss, older but somehow unchanged. "Hey kid, if you're hearing me, then nobody lost the plot completely. I hired people smarter than me. You'll meet them when you need to. First, write your own version before you read mine. Don't let my notes put words in your mouth. Second, eat. Third, in the picture frame by the doorway is a small hinge that isn't a hinge." I pressed stop, went to the doorway. The frame held an oil of haystack rock at low tide. At the bottom corner, a brass pin sat where a nail would be. I pressed. A little panel clicked and opened. Inside, a thumb drive silver as a fish. I laughed once, not at a joke, but at the sense of my brother reaching across the room with a magician's flourish he would deny. I put the drive on the desk and sat again. The first folder I pulled was labeled simply with dates. Inside, a bank's letterhead signatures that looked like mine but slanted wrong because stress changes ink. Emails from Brooke to a Gmail address that belonged to nobody I knew. Writing about a capacity evaluation with a doctor whose website said he specialized in navigating difficult family transitions. His fee required a wire transfer, receipts, a note that someone named Alvarez had called the clerk about upload errors, a recording transcript labeled Nora phone, ex parte. The transcript made my skin heat like a fever in a cold room. It read like I had been speaking underwater, losing nouns drifting. I said the names out loud. Each one sounded fine in the air. I put the transcript down and swallowed the sour. Near dusk, tires rolled up the gravel. I held my breath without deciding to. The bell at the side gate chimed once polite. When I opened the door, a woman with a wool cap and a paper bag stood on the porch in a mist halo. "Tiana," she said, as if that explained the bread loaf, the container of soup, the salt on her sleeves. "I'm the housekeeper. Ethan paid me too much for too little, and I never argued because I liked him. The sheets are done. Don't let the upstairs window in the hall stay open in a south wind or it sings." "Come in," I said. "No need." She looked over my shoulder at the room. "Place is stubborn, in a good way." Her eye slid to the hourglass. "He used to flip that when he started anything he didn't want to do. Seems effective. It is until you start flipping it just to hear the sand." She smiled quick and small. "There's a food pantry Wednesdays down in Seaside. If you want to do something with your hands that isn't reading, they'll take them." After she left, the house felt fuller. The soup tasted like someone had decided to keep me alive for another day. I ate at the counter with my coat still on the key in my pocket, heavy and honest. The next morning, I drove to Seaside in Ethan's old station wagon, its seat warmers a miracle I didn't deserve. The pantry sat in the basement of a church that had painted its doors teal. Inside, steam rose off vats of chili. I asked where to stand, and a woman in a gray cardigan pointed me to the onion table. "Ms. Alvarez," she said when I asked her name. "I used to work for the court, retired because the printers sounded like they were going to start speaking." I smiled. "I have questions about filings I don't know how to ask." "Bring paper," she said. "I like people who write things down." By noon, my eyes burned from onion and my notebook had 3 pages of arrows linking terms to simpler terms. Guardianship, motion to enjoin. Ex parte. She leaned on the table and circled chain of custody twice. "Where are the audio files?" she asked. "In a transcript. The audio's with them. Get copies. Keep the originals safe. Keep a log of anyone touching anything." She wiped her hands. "And don't say yes to a pastor with a clipboard." I didn't know what she meant until a man in a collar waited by my car in the church lot. His smile more teeth than warmth. "Your son asked me to check on you," he said, voice low, like we were sharing a secret. "Families heal best without lawyers." "Families don't heal at all when there's theft," I said, unlocking the car. He thought you might lash out in confusion. I'm not confused, I said, and I was proud how steady it came out. I'm getting clear. He placed a pamphlet under my wiper and stepped back, eyes soft with the kind of concern that lets itself off the hook. Back at Cliff House, a paper was taped to the gate. Service of process. The man on the steps wore a jacket too light for the cold and held an envelope the way you hold a bat when a pitch is coming and you plan to swing. Are you Nora Whitaker? He asked. I am. He handed me the envelope. You've been served. Inside, Jason's emergency motion glared up in legal font. Alex answered my call on the first ring. We expected it, he said. Stay put. I'll file a temporary restraining order to keep you in possession of the property and prevent interference. If anyone tries to get you to open the door, you don't. The sea kept throwing itself at the rock and withdrawing. I flipped the hourglass. That night, the wind came up hard. The house creaked in language it had learned long before me. I checked the locks twice, then 3 times, an old ritual taught by living where you're not wanted. Near midnight, the camera monitor on the study bookshelf pinged. A small box on the screen glowed motion at the side porch. I walked to the hall barefoot, the floor cold enough to make me careful. The monitor showed a figure in a rain slicker, in puddled light shoulders, hunched a pry bar glinting once like a fish turning. The hand on the doorknob twisted gently, as if testing how much of the world was still fastened. The old brass key in my pocket warmed against my thigh. The hourglass breathed sand. The ocean inhaled and held it. The knob kept turning like a question. I stepped back, found the wall, found the phone. The panic shortcut Alex had set lived under a red star. I pressed it. The system chirped once too bright, too loud in a sleeping house, and the porch light snapped from soft to surgical. The figure in the slicker flinched, shoulders tightening, then vanished out of frame, rain swallowing him fast as ink in water. Sirens came thin through wind, the kind you hear with your ribs before your ears. I put on David's old raincoat from the hall closet and waited at the top of the drive. The sheriff's SUV nosed to a stop. 2 deputies stepped out, rain beating on their hats like mercury. You the homeowner, the older one asked. I'm the person inside, I said. It seemed important to be precise. We walked the path with our beams low. Footprints in the gravel turned to smudges on stone at the cliff stairs, then nothing. Down on Hemlock, a truck started hard and took the corner too tight. The younger deputy jogged to the road, then waved us over to the shoulder where a pickup idled, crooked passenger door half ajar. On the floorboard, a pry bar damp with salt, a wad of paper pulped by rain, and a scrap of manila with my name in black marker half torn. Could be anything, the older one said, but he took pictures anyway, gloved up, bagged the bar and the paper. He read me the case number as if saying the number out loud nailed it to the night. He looked up at the dark face of the house. You alone out here. Tonight, I said. Keep the lights on. Don't open for anybody without a badge you've called yourself. He tipped his hat with emotion so small it might have been a habit more than a courtesy. You got ocean. Sound travel's weird. Don't let it talk you into things. When they left, I stood at the railing and let the spray find my face. The ocean didn't soften for me. It did what it had done for rock for a century. In the study, the hourglass had slumped into silence. I turned it. Sand began again, a small stubborn machine for measuring patience. I pressed play on this next cassette. WK4. Ethan's voice said rougher than the first. If you've made it this far, kid, you're already doing better than I did when I was your age. I hired a PI. The good kind doesn't brag, keeps his receipts. His reports are in the safe. You'll see initials show up BL, follow them. Paper leaves prints. I listened to him breathe a hitch like he'd walked a flight of stairs too fast. And hey, if you haven't found the little gift, unscrew the brass cap on the hourglass. I'm not as clever as I think I am, but I had help. I set the tape aside and reached for the hourglass. The brass top was smooth cold with a seam so fine you could miss it. I wrapped it in a dish towel, twisted. It resisted like a jar a child hands to an adult. Then it gave. Inside, nested in, felt a thumb drive as narrow as a stick of gum and a note in Ethan's block letters, audio org. Plus hash. Chain starts here. On the desk, Ethan's laptop woke in a wash of light. I inserted the drive and a folder opened itself, au.org, with 4 files, timestamps, SHA-256, hashes like silent oaths. It felt like holding a spine. I emailed Alex attached. The hashes wrote only found, primary audio plus integrity strings, hourglass cap. He replied in 3 words, do not move. Then another line, I'm bringing Riley in. Riley co-arrived the next afternoon like a grad student who hadn't slept and liked it that way. Windbreaker hair, half up, rolling case, trailing a cord snake. She shook my hand and put a portable workstation on the dining table, sliding placemats aside with the care of someone who'd been corrected about ring marks in childhood. Audio forensics, she said. Opening spectral software that painted sound like weather. I teach a lab up at PSU. Alex bribed me with coffee and moral outrage. I gave her the drive. She mounted it, verified hashes mirrored to a right block disk, narrated each step like a surgeon letting a patient know where the pain might start. She opened the file labeled Nora, phone full, wave. My voice rose in the room from a day I didn't remember speaking so slowly. It was me and not me, habitual phrases a cadence, but under it a click every 3 seconds like a metronome somebody forgot to turn off. Riley zoomed in. On the screen, a waveform flattened where a word should swell, then spiked between breaths. See that she said quiet because the room made you quiet. Copy-paste. Somebody moved syllables, here and here and here. She marked cuts with neon flags. You can fake confusion if you own the scissors. Where was I born? The voice on the file asked, slurring the vowels like they'd been left out in rain. St. Vincent, my voice answered, and the VIN stuttered a syllable, cloning itself. Riley rolled the track against a second file marked Nora Phone Meta JSON. Whoever did this forgot to strip the original metadata. Timestamps device ID carrier tower. We'll map it. She ran a script. On her screen, a map bloomed with dots southeast Portland, a tower near Laurelhurst, a timestamp at 8:41 p.m. on a Tuesday in June. The same night, Brooke had poured me chamomile from a glass bottle at my kitchen table, a devotion to wellness I had mistaken for care. There'd been a soft at the edge of my vision after that, like a lens going to sleep. Here, Riley said, fingers flying. Pharmacy log shows a cash pickup that afternoon for something sold over the counter in other countries, not here. Your email shows a delivery from a boutique wellness site the day before shared to a Brooke Turner at a Gmail. And this she dragged a PDF in a calendar invite labeled Capacity Eval for Prep. The shape of it clicked in me like a door I'd leaned against without knowing it was shut. I saw Brooke's ring tap the UPS counter, the diamond counting. I saw her set the brown bottle down, label turned away. Riley exhaled through her nose, a sound like she'd been right and hated it. We'll write a report. I'll put my name on it. Court reporter eats this for breakfast. Alex came in on the last of that sentence, hair-damp suit jacket spattered with coast weather. He took in the screens, put his coat on a chair back, and turned to me. We answer the emergency motion tomorrow by noon, he said. We asked for a remote hearing on Friday due to safety concerns and the distance to the courthouse. If you want a neutral space for any recorded meeting, the community hall on Hemlock rents by the hour. I want walls that don't belong to me, I said, and a table that's longer than their reach. Alex nodded. I'll reserve it. Ms. Alvarez smiled when I walked into the pantry's basement again, as if she had expected me to find her without calling. We claimed a plastic table between boxes of pasta and a poster about safe food temperatures. She had me stack papers in the order I said the days out loud. Timeline, she said. Left is before, right is after. Put verbs in the middle. I showed her the transcript. She traced a line under a date with her thumb. Chain of custody, she reminded, and then she eyeballed me. You look less like a person someone can talk down to. Someone tried in the parking lot, I said. They always do. Pastors, cousins, beloveds, they come as if holding hands out. Some are clean, some have syrup on them. She capped her pen. You hungry? Back at Cliff House, the side gate had a new scrape where the pry bar had kissed it. I ran my fingers over the metal and then over the hourglass. The brass cap now screwed tighter, the seam invisible. I flipped it. Sand fell and didn't care who watched. I kept reading. The safe had an envelope I had ignored because I didn't like its weight. I tore it open. Inside, a life insurance rider on my name that I had never seen, filled in by a broker who no longer worked at the brokerage beneficiary, Brooke L. Turner Contingent Jason Whitaker, in the event of dissolution. The date made my mouth dry. The agent's signature slanted the way men hurry out of guilt. I placed the rider down the way you put a hot pan on a trivet control without calm. Outside gulls heckled the air. The tide licked the base of the cliff and withdrew with a sound like dragging something heavy across tile. Riley sent her prelim report an hour later. Alex forwarded it to opposing counsel with the kind of subject line that didn't blink. He called me after he hit send. You're going to see movement, he said. Some of it legal, some of it loud. Don't engage. I don't want noise, I said. You want shape, he said. You're getting it. The house had become a desk. Pages multiplied, then arranged themselves when I didn't force them. I labeled a folder calls in another bank and another eval. I wrote dates on Post-its and stuck them to the table like stepping stones you could cross a river on. I ate crackers because soup took too long. After dark, I opened the original audio on headphones. Without the room to make me polite, the edits jumped like fish startled by a light. At minute 3, the pattern broke. The clicking stopped. My voice, uncut, dropped to a register I recognized from nights alone. Low, careful, trying to make words land on their feet. I'm tired, I heard myself say. I think that tea was strong. The metadata box on the screen showed the moment like a photograph, June 8th, 56 p.m. Device ID carrier tower GPS drift settling at my address. I looked at the pharmacy log again, same day, 3:12 p.m. Pickup. On the table, the hourglass thinned to a thread, and then to nothing. In my ears, my voice on the file breathed once, twice, then went silent, as if someone somewhere had placed a hand over the mouthpiece. The wind arrived before the rain like a rumor. By evening, it leaned on the house hard enough to make the windows bow. Lights flickered. The hourglass on the desk exhaled its last cone of sand and sat there spent. When the power went out, the silence had edges. The generator in the crawl space coughed, tried a rhythm, caught. I went outside with a flashlight and a knit cap, the beam shredding into spray. Mason from 2 houses over was already in the lane with a coil of extension cord over his shoulder headlamp, bright as a miner's. Your DVR on a backup, he shouted over the gusts. It is if I can find the right outlet, I said. We ran the line from his garage. He had a grid of labeled outlets like a man who liked order to the study window. I cracked just wide enough. Salt blew in a taste sharp as a bitten lip. We taped the connection high against the wall and watched the little green light hold. The camera monitor blinked awake, 3 squares of wet night, the porch a smeared watercolor. Keep the door latched, Mason said, pulling his cap low. Storm brings people out who think nobody's watching. He trotted back into the weather headlamp, bobbing a lighthouse reduced to a person. By morning, branches lay braided across the road, and the ocean had thrown kelp up like rope. I drove slow into town. The community hall sat above the shops, long windows looking down on Hemlock. Fluorescents hummed. Coffee had been made in a metal urn tall as a toddler. The room smelled like scorched filters and floor polish. A court reporter checked her levels. The mediator's soft voice, hard eyes set a small digital timer on the table and asked if we'd prefer it point toward us or away. Toward, I said. Alex set a clipboard in front of me and clicked a pen. Riley opened her case and turned the screen so the table could see. Jason and Brooke arrived 5 minutes late with a new lawyer in an expensive coat and wet cuffs. Jason didn't look at me right away. Brooke did gaze quick like a scan gun. Her hair was a blade that moved as one piece when she turned. The mediator set guidelines without force but with gravity. Speak in turn, no interruptions. The court reporter's keys began their bright clatter, a sound like hails. Ms. Whitaker, the mediator, said you requested this recorded meeting. I did. My voice found a pitch between the ceiling lights and the coffee steam. I want you to see what I have. Riley launched the spectrogram, first the screen filling with blues and greens and thin lines of white. This is the disputed audio labeled Nora phone ex parte, she said, pointer steady. Here are the edit points. She tapped, and in the silence of the hall you could hear the word edit. Nonlinear artifacts appear at regular intervals. The baseline noise floor repeats. We verified the original file's integrity against the hashes captured at source. She glanced at the court reporter. All of this will be in a sworn report. Brooke rolled her eyes. YouTube science, she said. Riley didn't look at her. Metadata puts the call at a tower near Laurelhurst at 8:41 p.m., June 10th. A wellness shipment lands at Ms. Turner's email June 9th. A pharmacy cash pickup matches a known sedative purchased at 3:12 p.m., June 10th. Coincidence? Brooke said fast, then too fast. Doctors suggest preparatory teas all the time. It helps the evaluation go smoothly, Alex said, like butter. Brooke's lawyer touched her sleeve under the table. Jason sat back and stared at the window for a second too long. The mediator's timer ticked like a calm heart. Financials, Riley said, and put up a simple ledger. It was almost rude in how clean it was. Bank transfers in Nora's name to a boutique crypto exchange. Wallet addresses resolving to Shell's, Shell's resolving to a personal account that shared household expenses with Brooke Turner, database matches on utilities, an Amazon account, a gym membership. A screen capture of a text, we're okay if she signs Doc is on board. Anonymous tips don't count, Brooke said. Her mouth smiled, her eyes didn't. Anyone could have. We subpoenaed the exchange, Alex said. KYC records, driver's license on file, yours. He slid a page across to the mediator, who accepted it without flinch. Also a rider on a life policy in Ms. Whitaker's name assigning you as beneficiary if she remained under court-appointed care longer than 6 months. Brooke made a small sound the kind a throat makes when it forgets which direction it wants air to go. You can't use that, she said. It's protected. The door opened and the deputy from the night of the truck slipped in with rain on his shoulders and a messenger bag. He waited for the mediator to lift her eyes. Apologies. Service for parties present. He handed sealed envelopes to Jason's lawyer and Brooks. Notice of temporary account hold and request for documents from the U.S. Attorney's Office related to suspected elder financial abuse and conspiracy. He left as quietly as he'd come, stamp of boots soft on waxed floor. Jason looked at the envelope as if it might bloom teeth. I reached into my bag and set the hourglass on the table. San waited at the top patient. The room watched me watch it. I flipped it. The first grains fell with a whisper. There are 2 paths, I said. I kept my hands flat on the table so my voice didn't have to carry their weight. 1, you sign a sworn confession. You return the deed to the Laurelhurst house. You transfer back funds misappropriated plus costs. You issue a public statement that you and your counsel filed fabricated evidence and manipulated a capacity evaluation. You commit funds to the Seaside Pantry under your names, not mine. We resolve civilly. And 2, Jason asked, eyes on the hourglass, not me. We file criminal and civil actions. Alex said, not softening it. Elder financial abuse, conspiracy, fraud. The U.S. attorney will decide where lines cross. You enjoy this, Brooke said to me, voice bright and brittle. You like the power. I like breath, I said, and my own front door. Jason pinched the bridge of his nose, a gesture from childhood headaches after too much Little League sun. I made mistakes, he said. His lawyer's hand moved once in warning and stopped when Jason didn't. I'm not talking about feelings. I'm talking about numbers. But I didn't. He swallowed. I didn't plan to leave you on a bench. You planned to take what I had, I said. Where I slept after that wasn't on your whiteboard. Riley slid a new page in front of the mediator. Chain of custody, she said. Contacts with the evaluating physician payments logged to Ms. Turner, and an email from counsel requesting cleaner samples of voice due to artifacts. We'll produce originals. Brooke's jaw set. We won't sign anything, she said, looking at her lawyer like he might confirm her before he could. This is a circuit. Her lawyer didn't nod. He didn't shake his head either. He stared at the DOJ letter as if reading it backward might give him a different outcome. How long, Jason said, eyes still on the sand. Choose a number, I said. 48 hours. I looked at the hourglass. The top was half light, half dark. 60, I said. I like rounder numbers. Jason nodded as if numbers were the only language left that made sense. Brooke stood so fast, her chair skidded and squealed. The mediator reached to still the digital timer even though no one had set it. The court reporter's fingers paused and hovered a bird deciding on a branch. No one shook hands. We signed the attendance sheets. The recorder's red dot went dim. Outside, the rain had softened to a shine on the street. I could smell creosote from the telephone poles, a tar sweetness that took me back to summers in sandals. At Cliff House, the wind had lost interest. The gate creaked like it knew what to do without me. On the porch, a cardboard box sat centered on the mat, no label, no return address. The tape was clean, one continuous line. I lifted it and felt the weight shift like a sleeping animal. I cut the tape with the edge of my brass key. Inside an album in a plaid fabric cover, the kind sold 20 years ago at drugstores. I knew it before I saw the first photo, David's hand raised to block the camera. Jason at 9 with a gap where his tooth would come. My mother in a pink blouse I had hated but kept because it smelled faintly of her powder. Someone had bought the unit. Someone had mailed back what I had come to reclaim. At the bottom of the box lay a single sheet of paper torn from a legal pad. The handwriting was blocky, like someone trying to look calm. 4 words, a dash, an initial. Choose mercy or fire. The album's fabric was damp at one corner, flecked with rain that had found the seam. I carried it inside and set it on the table, palm flat, to hold it still. The hourglass on the desk showed a cone of sand that had formed a perfect point before settling. The ocean below the deck drew a long breath and let it go. Rough the night. I left the album open to a photo of Jason at 9 with a chipped tooth and a glove too big for his hand. It held the page flat the way memory pins one thing and lets another drift. He arrived alone the next afternoon, shoulders caved under a coat that had seen better weather. Alex met him at the door and led him to the dining table we'd turned into a bench of law. The same court reporter set her machine. The same red light blinked alive on the camera. No mediator, no coffee urn, just the house and the ocean, and a timer on the mantel nobody touched. Jason placed both palms on the wood as if it might move. He didn't look at me first. He looked at the hourglass, then at the album. The page showed his father's hand mid-wave, blurred from laughter. I'll sign, he said, voice tired enough to be honest. All of it. Alex slid the stack across. Affidavit. Property transfer. Wire instruction. Public statement drafted in simple words that would read the same aloud as on the screen. Jason read each page the way you do when you know reading won't change the ink. His hand shook once, then found its groove. The notary watched the pen and the clock and the name steady itself. In person at the bank, I said when the last blue ribbon was sealed. No online transfers. We sit at the window with the little plant, and you put numbers back where you took them. He nodded, today. The bank at Tolovana had carpet that swallowed sound and windows that faced the parking lot instead of the sea. We sat. The manager cleared his throat 3 times and pinched the bridge of his nose when he thought no one was looking. On the screen, my name returned to the account it had left. $312,400. The zeros looked theatrical. The numbers didn't. Jason signed another set of forms, the deed to the Laurelhurst house back to me, a donation he would make in his own name to the pantry on Hemlock. An agreement to attend meetings where chairs sat in circles and coffee burned slowly and people said their names out loud. He slid his phone across without being asked and showed a reservation held under his no initials, no shell. Outside, the wind had dropped. The lot smelled of tires warming in brief sun. Jason squared the envelope with the receipts inside it. His mouth opened like it might try for a different shape of day than closed. "I can't undo what happened," he said. "I can show up to the parts that come from it." "Good," I said. The word surprised both of us in how small it was. "There's a distance clause for 12 months. You'll get a copy." He nodded. "You'll hear from lawyers," he said, and then softer, "You'll hear from me less." At Cliff House, the album waited where I'd left it, patient as furniture. The hourglass had emptied itself while we were gone. I didn't turn it. I set the new deed under Ethan's letter and the brass key on top weight over ink. Brooke's lawyer sent 3 emails the next day, and a 4th with caps, and a 5th that didn't pretend. The U.S. Attorney's Office sent requests with lists that lengthened and narrowed as they found their path. Alex handled the language. I answered what asked for my voice. Tiana came by with a bag of oranges and a loaf that cracked when you pressed it. She put a hand on the door frame like she was checking the house for a fever. "You flipped it," she said, glancing toward the empty glass. "Good." I walked the stairs to the garage that afternoon and stood in the oil-dark space with its workbench and its memory of salt. It had one long window facing the lane and a cracked concrete pad that wanted painting. I swept sawdust left from a project Ethan never finished and found the outline of a rectangle chalked on the floor, a faint box where a rug might go or a table. The chalk gave up to the broom in a small cloud that smelled like school. The Tide Turn Foundation didn't start with a ribbon. It started with a folding table, 2 chairs, a donation jar with coins that clinked lonely, and a sign I borrowed from the pantry until ours came, Hot Meal Wed 6-8. Ms. Alvarez brought a clipboard with intake forms she'd reduced to 1 page, big boxes for dates so hands with tremor could land. Mason fixed the flicker in the overhead light and cut a wedge in the door so the knob would stop biting paint. Skye showed up in a clean hoodie and asked if we needed a pair of hands that knew how to move boxes without breaking what was in them. I pointed at the stack by the wall. He carried them like someone taught him once and he'd learned. The brass key unlocked a box I didn't know I had a right to open. Weeks later, an envelope arrived by certified mail with a logo I didn't recognize and a number written on a sticky note, Box 7 and 18. The bank downtown had marble floors that remembered every step they'd carried. A clerk in a navy vest led me to a room with doors and a table that showed its age like a favorite cutting board. The key fit the lock with a softness that felt rehearsed. Inside the safe deposit box, a slim portfolio, a small packet of stock certificates in a company I'd heard of, and a sketch on vellum folded twice. When I smoothed it, a lighthouse stood in graphite across a cliff that could have been ours. At the bottom in Ethan's hand, "Keep the light on." E. I slid the sketch into a frame and hung it above the desk in the garage. It caught the afternoon glare and made a narrow beam on the floor. People stepped through it and didn't notice, then turned back and did. The diner gave me their old neon when they replaced it. Open in red that trended pink at one corner, the transformer hum shifting, hitchy at low heat. Mason mounted it high over the garage door, ran the wires clean, flipped the switch, and we all stood back like a crowd before a tree on a winter night. The glass glowed, the hum settled, the word held. Jason didn't come by. He sent a photo some nights, a folding chair in a circle, a styrofoam cup, a handout with 12 lines printed like steps. His face didn't take the frame. The messages stayed short. Week 3, present. Week 11, still here. I replied with 2 words every time received Jason. Brooke's name showed up in headlines I didn't save, and in forms I initialed without reading the parts that wanted me to pity someone I didn't know. The doctor's website went dark. The evaluating company updated a policy written by a lawyer trained to choose verbs that sound like apologies without kneeling. On Wednesdays, we hinged the fold out and set out bowls. We printed copies of Riley's report and Ms. Alvarez's one sheet about guardianship. People came with shoeboxes and questions in a habit of minimizing their own clarity. We kept a kettle going and let steam fog the window. The hourglass took a spot on the reception shelf. We flipped it at the start of each intake, not as a threat, but as a promise. Your story gets this long on the first telling, and then longer when it needs. The Laurelhurst house stood with its porch boards newly scraped and a fresh coat on the trim. I had the locks changed and the mail forwarded. I didn't move in. It wasn't a testament to anything. It was a choice of room. The cliff gave me a horizon I could set my breath against. The sound of water hitting rock made the rest of the world recalibrate. On a clear morning, I walked the stairs cut into the cliff and stood at the railing where spray made my skin taste like salt. The hourglass sat on the desk upstairs, half full, sand slicing down neat as a thought. The neon over the garage gave off a faint hum you could hear only when the ocean exhaled. When the bell at the gate chimed, I wiped my hands on my jeans and crossed the yard. A woman stood there with a manila folder and a scarf wrapped too many times around her throat. She looked at the neon, then at me, then at the folder like she was deciding which to address first. "Do you help people figure out what happened to them?" she asked, words careful as if they might break if put down wrong. "We do," I said. The latch gave under my thumb. The brass key warmed in my pocket. Inside, the hourglass breathed its sand. The sea drew in and let go. I swung the door open wide and stepped aside so she could pass. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.